Hello, guys. Sorry for the delay in getting this to you. Just some technical difficulties on my end, being out in Arizona, but up in the mountains and down and all things. Anyway, here we are now. I wanted to make sure I get this one to you since it has been warm and humid there in Florida, and will be for a while now. So I just want to go over some of the implications of running in the heat and humidity, which we have plenty of both of in Florida right now. So the biggest thing I want you to take away from this is that training paces become meaningless when the humidity is high and the temperature's high. In Florida summers, we experience both of these, that we have a pretty high temperature and we have a very high humidity. So those two things combined just make training paces not relevant at all, completely meaningless. And I'll show you in a couple slides kind of how to put that into numbers, because sometimes it's easier to see objectively what the difference is when it's cool outside versus when it's hot and humid, because we can really beat ourselves up in the summer, both mentally and physically, of wanting to hit paces that we could in the winter, not recovering the same way that we could in the winter. And because a lot of times we can't objectify that, it's hard. The summers are hard in Florida. So I'm trying to shed some light on how we can get through the summer to have some really great races come the fall when the weather does start to cool a little bit. So when the temperature increases, the body cools itself primarily through the evaporation of sweat. And so this is why it's interesting, like being out here in Arizona, for the most part, we've been in Flagstaff, which is the weather's cool. In the mornings, the humidity is low. We fly out of Phoenix and stay there for a couple days on both ends. And so it's really warm there. You know, the highs this time of year in Phoenix are 110, 115. And but the humidity is really low. So it's interesting coming from Florida, how I don't feel like I'm sweating there, but it's still very hot. Now in Florida, because the humidity is high, we're not sweating. I mean, that sweating isn't evaporating as much. So we're sweating a lot, but that sweat isn't evaporating off our skin. And that's actually how we cool ourselves. So the humidity reduces that evaporation. So we're not cooling effectively at all. It's just sitting on us. Whether you're one of those runners or run with one of those runners that you can hear like your feet squishing because you've just been sweating so much and they're just so wet, that's Florida. What also ends up happening when the temperature increases is our blood is sent out to our skin for cooling. So this leaves less blood to go to our muscles, and we'll talk about it also leaves less blood to go to our GI tract to help with digestion. So all that blood's being sent out to the periphery, sent out to our skin in an effort to cool ourselves. What you can see in the next point here can also lead to GI distress, since less blood is going to the digestive system. So runners tend to have more GI distress when the temperature is higher, both in racing and training, than in the cooler weather. So this means we're going to have a higher heart rate at the same pace. It's why I don't use heart rate, especially in the summer. It's not reliable at all. Our heart rate's going to be higher just as our body's trying to cool itself, not as a measure of how hard that we're actually working. So if you're someone that uses heart rate all the time, try not to pay as much attention to it in the summer. It's just not reliable. It's going to tell you that it's really hot outside more than the effort that you're going. We're going to get dehydrated faster. You guys have all, I'm sure, experienced this at this point. Like we're sweating more, our body's trying to cool itself. So we need to make sure that we're staying hydrated. Greater perceived effort. So if you run a 10-minute pace when it's 50 degrees outside, and then you run a 10-minute pace when it's 90 degrees outside and 75% humidity, 90% humidity, 75 degree dew point, it's going to feel a lot harder. So just take that into account. We have to modify our paces accordingly. And that's why this last bullet here is slower pacing is required. And this is across the board, whether it's tempo, repetition, interval, easy pace. The shorter efforts, you don't have to modify quite as much, but you might need more recovery on the back end from them. And that's super normal. It's just physiologically, we cannot run as fast when the temperature is really high. That's unfortunately how it is. So I want to touch on the relative humidity because this is what I look at the most when I'm going out to run in the morning. And so this is the amount of water in the air. So it's taking the humidity and it's taking the temperature and it's pretty much combining them. Because like I mentioned, it can be really hot outside and the humidity can be low. And that's going to be very different than if the temperature is high and the humidity is high. So when the relative humidity increases, the body struggles to stay cool since evaporation becomes much harder. So perfect example, like I said in Phoenix, that the relative humidity or the dew point is very low. So it's hot out and I know I'm sweating, but it's evaporating as soon as I'm sweating. So I'm not wet at all. I don't look sweaty. This is a more appropriate number of temperature to monitor than just strictly temperature as we get into these summer months, especially in Florida, because like I said, our humidity is so high. You guys have experienced it all. So here's the effect in numbers, and you can screenshot this. I'll post just this slide. But it's really interesting. They've done a lot of research on the performance adjustment that we need to make based on the dew point. If it's below 55 degrees, you really don't have to adjust much at all, both easy running or hard running. So this shows that when the dew point's below 55, that's optimal conditions to be running fast. As that dew point increases, you can see we go from 1% to 2 to 3% to 15%, a performance adjustment where easy running and hard running becomes very difficult. Having looked at the Florida weather last week, we're right in that, like anywhere from the 73 to 75 degree dew point right now. And that's going to stick around for the summer, unfortunately. So you're looking at anywhere from that like 5 to 15% performance adjustment. Obviously, that's a very big range. And it's going to depend on how long you've been in Florida, if you're adjusted. There's other factors, of course. But I think this is a really great measure to use as to how much you need to slow down. Or if you get done a workout and you just feel defeated and you feel so much slower, put it into numbers. Take what you could run 4 months ago, do 5 to 8% slower than that, and see, are you still in that range? Because then you're right where you need to be. We can't hit the numbers that we were hitting before. So I love this slide and this research because it puts it objectively. It makes me feel better about my training when I go out and I feel bad. I'm not running as fast. I can't recover. And the weather's why. So good news is that your body does adapt. So these adaptations include you're going to increase your sweat rate, which is good and bad, right? That's why we get our squishy shoes. And in Florida, if it's not helping us cool down, I don't know how much it's really helping or not helping us cool down because it's not evaporating. But we tend to sweat more. The hotter we are, the more we sweat. We start sweating earlier on the run to help try to cool ourselves, keep our core temperature down. We do end up having a little bit of a lower heart rate. It's still going to be higher than in the cool months, but you do get this peak of where your heart rate really increases when we start to get that summer weather. And then it does lower a little bit as your body adapts for that increase, improved cooling efficiency and better plasma volume. So better plasma volume is just how much volume of plasma or blood you have in your body. So it's a running joke that high humidity and heat is poor man's altitude, that you get a lot of the same benefits because when you come to altitude, you get that same increased plasma volume. Of course, you have to be careful both at altitude and in the heat and humidity that you don't overcook yourself, but we do have some of the adaptations that are positive. So this starts 4 to 5 days, but meaningful adaptation is 10 to 14 days. So after about 2 weeks of this weather, we're as adapted as we're going to be, and we just need to be really smart about how we're training. So a couple common warm weather training mistakes that I see. One is not adjusting your training and goal paces. This is probably the biggest one that I see because like I said, physiologically, we just cannot run the same paces. And if we do try to run those paces, a lot of times we're overreaching for them. We're not able to recover from them. It's just overall harder on our body. So we're not getting the same benefits from them. It's unavoidable. It's not to be negative. It's not to say that you can't still run well. You can't still run really fast. We can't still put this consistency together to have really great fall races. But if you PR or have these amazing races in the summer, get ready for the fall and spring, because when that cool weather hits, you're going to be able to run even faster. But just adjust. Like if you're not feeling good and you just feel beat down and you feel like you're overreaching, slow it down. Don't overreach for those paces. And also try not to get frustrated. This can be really hard because as runners, we tend to be pretty type A. We want to hit certain paces. We get frustrated when we can't. But try to use perceived effort and how you feel instead of set paces over the summer. Because like I said, you're going to end up running yourself into the ground or potentially getting hurt over the summer. And then we're jeopardizing when the weather cools how well we're going to be able to run. The other big one is not enough recovery. So the body redirects resources used to help with recovery, to help keep you cool, even when you aren't running. It's not like we're in this vacuum where we're only running when it's hot outside. We're also living when it's hot outside. So our body's constantly redirecting resources to try to keep us cool. It takes us, more energy to recover. So really make sure that you're getting in good nutrition, good hydration, good sleep. If any of you guys are parents like me or just in the trenches with kids that don't sleep, this can be really hard, but do the best that you can to prioritize sleep. And typically we also tend to get less sleep because we have a lot more sunlight during the summer months. The kids are out of school. We're getting up earlier to avoid the heat. So try to prioritize sleep. That's when your body recovers. That's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck over any like normative recovery boots or cold plunges or saunas or all the hot things on the market right now. If you just sleep, that's the best thing you can be doing. So how to combat the heat. I've already talked about adjusting paces. Look at that slide. I'm not going to go through that again. I talked about the heart rate. It increases to cool itself. It's not a reliable measure of how hard that you're working. Indoor training is a really good one, in my opinion. I know the treadmill gets a lot of hate, like it's the treadmill. I don't want to be stuck inside. And I totally get it. I would love to be running in 50-degree weather on gorgeous trails every day of the year. But where we live in Florida, that's just not the case. It's not realistic. And so sometimes going on the treadmill, whether it's for an easy run or a workout, can be a game changer. Give your body a little bit of a break. It can be a good confidence booster because you're able to hit better paces. The climate's controlled. You can have your nutrition and hydration right there. So I think indoor training in a treadmill is a really, really great tool to use during the summer if you have access to it. Cross training is another good one. We can get in the pool, you can get on the bike. You're still going to get the aerobic benefits without beating yourself up running. Running is just going to be the hardest. It's harder on your body from a pounding standpoint, and it generates the most heat because it is so metabolically demanding that you're not going to get as hot. You'll still get hot, but not as hot on a bike or definitely in a pool where you're in water. So those are really great options for the Florida summer also. Dress appropriately. I don't think I need to harp on this too much. You guys have been out there. Don't wear black. Don't wear real heavy clothing that isn't breathable. Avoid the hottest part of the day. Don't go out at 1, 2 o'clock. Try to get up in the morning or later in the day. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Start runs well hydrated. Drink before you feel thirsty. Make sure you're also getting in some electrolytes. Some tricks can be ice in your hands or in your hat, running through sprinklers, cold water on your head or neck. All of those can really help just try to keep your core body temperature down a little bit when you're out on a run. So nutritional considerations in the heat. I'm not a dietitian, so I'm not going to harp on these too much. I've more gotten help from Danielle, who is our registered dietitian with New Wave. But just want to touch on these because I think they get overlooked sometimes when we're just get overlooked during the hot months when things can change drastically from a nutritional standpoint. Very tongue-tied today, I apologize. One is gut function. I talked about that a little bit, but your ability to digest food decreases, which causes an increased risk of GI distress out on the run because that blood, like I said, is all going out to the periphery, out towards your skin to try to cool itself. It's not helping in your digestive tract as much. So train our gut to take on more carbs, fluid, and electrolytes while we're training. Our gut is a muscle, so we can train it to do it. So if something doesn't work right away, don't give up. There's plenty of different nutritional products on the market, whether you're getting it in through liquid calories or by eating calories. There's plenty of different things you can try to get in, and you can train your gut to be able to tolerate it. But just be mindful that it might be a little tougher in the summer months. And if something worked in the cooler months and now it's not working, we might just have to adjust a little bit, that take a little more at a time, switch the product that you're using. There's a lot of different strategies out there. Carb metabolism tends to be different also in the heat. So increased demand for carbs used for our muscles, which it's like their fuel. It is their fuel. We go through them earlier and faster. Our body's just working harder in the heat and humidity. So it just needs more fuel. It needs more carbs. I know I've had several runners that have tried to steer away from carbs for a variety of reasons. And this would be something to talk more with Danielle and a registered dietitian about. But coming from a background of female endurance athlete in, how do I want to word it? Some very demanding environments and seeing a lot of eating disorders or just a relative energy deficiency in sport. This REDS is this new term that's being used both in men and women, whether intentionally or unintentionally under fueling. And carbs tend to get a bad rap for a while, but carbs are what fuels our body. Please feel empowered to increase your carb and calorie intake. Your body's working harder in the summer months. You're training really hard. I mean, I'm doing this presentation as part of a run training camp. You guys are increasing our mileage and our volume every week. Carbs and calories are what are going to keep you going. So please make sure that you're getting enough in both before, during, and after exercise. Hydration is another big one. There's big changes in sweat loss. So sipping on fluids throughout the day, making sure you get electrolytes in. Sports drinks are going to be a bit more effective than just water alone. And that doesn't have to be your sugary Gatorades. It can be like Liquid IV that we passed out this week. There's Element. I mean, it does have 1,000 milligrams of sodium, so make sure that you need it. But there are so many hydration products on the market right now to get in some electrolytes to really help combat this dehydration. And if you're training for more than an hour, have electrolytes during and after training. Honestly, if I'm going for more than 30 minutes, I'm having some. I tend to be a very salty and high sweater, so that's part of the reason. But make sure that you're getting in not only water. What's also interesting in the summer, I'm sure some of you guys have experienced this, we have this appetite suppression. So this can lead to underfueling just because when you get done a hot run, sometimes the last thing you want to do is eat. So packing a protein shake or some kind of calories that you can drink can really help get those calories in when you don't feel like eating. Also, fueling with smaller, more frequent meals throughout the day can really help. And liquid calories. Don't forget that liquid calories go a long way. Smoothies are great during the summer. You can pack those with tons of really great nutrients in there. So sometimes you have to be creative, but just keep in mind that sometimes we don't feel like eating in the summer, but we still need to make sure that we're getting it in. I want to touch real quick on sweat rate and composition because I've had some questions about this, and I also offer it in the office now after learning what a salty sweater I am. So testing your sweat rate and composition can be really valuable information to help direct your hydration needs, especially in the summer in Florida. So sweat rate is going to be the amount of sweat that you're losing in a given period of time. This is going to vary drastically based on conditions, hydration. For females, even different times of the month, we sweat a different amount. And it's largely different between individuals. So Ed is going to sweat different than I sweat, regardless of the time of year. To do this, you would weigh yourself before and after exercise. So you have no clothing on, you weigh yourself, you go for a run, you need to have it be at least 45 minutes because there is a delay in when we start to sweat when we start running, but 45 minutes to an hour, and then you weigh yourself after. If you had anything to drink during that run, you want to make sure that you take that into account. But that loss of weight while you're running is going to be your fluid loss. And so that can help you determine how much you need to get in before and during runs. We're never going to be able to replace it one-to-one, but it gives you an idea if you're sweating a lot out, if you're not sweating as much out, and how much you want to get in. Sweat composition, on the other hand, we largely look at sodium in this. This is going to be the most important electrolyte that we look at for runners. So we're looking at the amount of sodium you lose in your sweat, and this is measured in milligrams per liter. This is largely genetic. It changes very little over your lifetime, but it does vary drastically between individuals. And I'll get into it a little bit more detail here. So this is what I walked through with your sweat rate. Weigh yourself before and after. Take into account if you drank anything. About 2.2 pounds is 1 liter. So when we do this conversion, if you have a sweat composition test, we can see if you lose 1 liter and you lose 900 milligrams of sodium per liter, we know you lost 900 milligrams of sodium in that hour run. So we can take that into account for our next races. This is going to become more crucial as we get longer in races, the 10K, 15K, half marathon, but even for fueling throughout the week, it's really good to know. So I would encourage all of you guys to at least do your sweat rate, weigh yourself before and after an easy run, just to get an idea of how much you're losing. So how to determine your sweat composition? You can do it through trial and error. The average runner has a sodium sweat concentration of about 950 milligrams per liter. So the average runner loses 950 milligrams of sodium per liter of sweat. So depending on how much you sweat, it's going to be the other half of that equation. If you sweat 1 liter, you're losing that 950. If you sweat half a liter, it's going to be half of that. So it can vary very drastically. And that you can start using that to dictate your hydration strategy and adjust based on how you feel. So this is just trial and error of you take a liquid IV and you see how you feel. You try an Element. You try these different nutritional products that have a variety of sodium concentrations in there and see how you feel. You can also look for signs of being a salty sweater. So you have that white residue on your skin that once your sweat dries, you kind of have that white crusty sweat. That can mean that you sweat a higher concentration of sodium. If sweat stings your eyes, or your sweat, unfortunately, if it gets in your mouth, tastes a little salty, that can be an indicator that you sweat a little more. If you sweat a little more sodium in your sweat. Headaches, cramping, feeling faint, all those things can play a part. Unfortunately, this can also just be a general sign of dehydration if you're just not drinking enough fluid. But pay attention to those. If that tends to happen more, it could be telling you that you need to get in more just fluid and volume of hydration, or that we need to get in a little bit more sodium. Or the other way is to have a sodium composition test performed. I do offer these in the office. I'm happy to talk with you guys more if that's something you're interested in. It's completely painless. You don't have to exercise. It takes 45 to 60 minutes. We put these little electrodes on your forearm here. Some people feel like a very slight buzzing, tingling. Other people don't feel anything. And it just induces sweat under one of those electrodes. We collect that sweat, we run it through a machine, and then right there, it gives us the data that we need in terms of how much sodium that you're sweating. So if you're looking to do a marathon and you've struggled with hydration and or nutrition, that might be something that you want to do. But a lot of times we can get pretty close to trial and error. Having done a lot of these sweat tests, there's a reason that 950 is the average, that a lot of people come in 800 to 1,000 on that test. So that would be a good place to start if you're not interested in the sweat composition test, or just want to try that and see how you feel, because it might work out great. Couple warning signs of heat illness I just want to go over quickly to make sure you guys are looking for these both in yourself and with your training partners as we're out there together. So some symptoms of heat exhaustion include dizziness, nausea, chills, goosebumps, headache, and very heavy sweating. And so that heavy sweating, usually there's a change in sweating when this starts to set in. Like I said, I'm a pretty heavy sweater from the beginning. It doesn't mean that I'm suffering from heat exhaustion, but there would be a change in that sweat rate. Heat stroke, and this would be an emergency, is confusion. So there's a change in mental state. They stop sweating. That's a big one. Staggering, obviously collapse. So just be mindful of those. We don't want to get to that point of heat stroke out there. So make sure that you and your running partners are hydrating enough when you're out on the road. And that's where we're going to end it. So thanks, guys, for bearing with me this week. I hope this was beneficial. I'll post that one slide of the adjustments that you need to make based on the dew point. But make sure you guys are staying hydrated out there. You're staying fueled, getting your electrolytes in, and really excited to see all of you guys when I get back to Florida this weekend.